All right, today we're stepping into a pretty dark and philosophical world. It's a Gothic allegory, really, all about the soul. This is a story of two masks, two different jesters, and the really painful but absolutely necessary journey from hiding in the shadows to, well, dancing in the light. So let's dive in. So, our story kicks off in a world that's just defined by its own absurdity. And this is where we meet our main character, the Seeker. He's desperately trying to build this safe, logical little sanctuary for himself in a universe that is, at its core, just chaotic. But as you can tell from this quote, his world is already a shattered spire, and you just know that foundation is about to completely crumble. And that brings us to our first major idea, the Shadow Jester. Now, this isn't so much a character as it is a state of being, a kind of defensive crouch that the Seeker takes on to protect himself from a really terrifying truth. So, what's he so afraid of? What's he hiding from? Well, this slide gets right to the heart of it, an inner emptiness, a void that he just can't bring himself to face. And his solution? To build these super rigid walls of logic, to create a world that feels predictable and, quote, safe. But you can see him there, basically building his own prison, and you just know, it's all an illusion. This right here is the mask the Seeker wears. The Shadow Jester is basically a symptom of a sickness of the will. You can think of it as a kind of spiritual paralysis. Its main weapons are cruel mockery and this really biting sarcasm, but these aren't for laughs, they are shields. They're shields for a deeply, deeply fragile ego. And here are the tools in the Shadow Jester's toolkit. It is all about static control, about freezing everything and everyone in place. That sarcasm and mockery, it's all used to keep people at a distance, to literally arrest the spirit and stop any real vulnerable transformation from happening. It's a strategy that leads to one place: spiritual entropy, where all that amazing potential just turns to dust.
But, no defense can hold up forever. An outside force is coming, one that's basically destined to shatter the Seeker's carefully built world. It is time to meet the catalyst for all this change.
You can just feel the shift, can't you? The air gets cold. Those walls are literally starting to crack. That level and safe sanctuary he built is being breached by the one thing the Seeker has been hiding from this whole time, the void itself. And here it is, the Sapphire Jester. Now this isn't a hero, and it's not a villain. It's more like a force of nature, a whirlwind of kinetic nihilism, and its only purpose is to destroy everything that is unearned. It holds up this terrifying mirror, forcing the Seeker to finally see the truth of what he's built. The Sapphire Jester brings with it this absolutely brutal philosophy, the logic of zero. It whispers this devastating truth into the Seeker's ear, that in the grand cosmic scheme of things, every single human achievement is just dross, worthless trash. All the things we build, all the values we think are so important, ultimately, they mean nothing. And boom, with that one revelation, it all falls apart. The safe, logical world the Seeker had built is exposed for exactly what it is: an illusion, a contract written in disappearing ink. This is what the story calls the necessary collapse. And the fall, it's not a tragedy. It's actually a prerequisite for whatever comes next. Okay, so the Seeker's world is in total ruins. He's been plunged into what the story calls a crucible. And this is the climax. This is the moment where he has to finally face the one thing he built his entire world to avoid. This is the big question, right? When your entire reality is shattered into a million pieces, how do you even begin to survive? The answer is just two words, but it's the hardest path you can possibly imagine: terminal honesty. And what this means is finally confronting the ugliest man, which is a symbol for the deepest, most shameful parts of your own soul. The parts you never want anyone to see, especially yourself. And this comparison slide just lays out the two paths so perfectly. This is the core conflict. On the left, you've got the Shadow Jester, who is defined by hiding from the void. He uses static control to protect his ego, and he arrests his own spirit to avoid any change. But look at the right, the Light Jester, that potential future. He smiles at the void. He trades that tight control for the lightness of a creator. He doesn't protect his ego. He integrates his shadows, including that ugliest man. And he doesn't arrest his spirit. He embodies the spirit of becoming. That moment of terminal honesty, that's the turning point right between these two columns. So after confronting that ugliest truth, the Seeker doesn't just survive. He transforms. And this is the final act, a rebirth from all that rubble. This is the Light Jester's dance. The collapse is totally reframed here. It's not a tragedy anymore. It's a cosmic punchline. This is called the Dionysian rupture, a term inspired by the Greek god of chaos and wild ecstasy. It's this moment of violent, yes, but ultimately liberating destruction. The old, rigid self is just obliterated, making way for something brand new. So how does this whole transformation actually happen? The story calls it the grave dance. First, he has to discard that mask of false order. Second, he has to allow his soul to liquefy, to become fluid and adaptable again. Third, he takes the poison of his own shame and transforms it into creative fuel. And finally, he stops being a destroyer of values and becomes a true affirmer of life itself. And this is who emerges from the flames, the Light Jester. This isn't just a happier version of the Seeker. This is a fully integrated being. He's taken his deepest, darkest shadows and made them part of a higher, joyful wisdom, what Nietzsche famously called the gay science. His final philosophical achievement is something called amor fati, which means love of one's fate. So the Light Jester doesn't just accept the painful collapse of his world, he loves it. He recognizes that the destruction was the necessary, dark, fertile ground from which his new self had to grow. And with that, the journey is over. The coronation is complete. The Seeker, who is now the Light Jester, has forged authentic meaning, not by avoiding the rubble, but by building something new with it. He has become a sovereign soul. And so, we end right back where we started, with a question. Because this whole grand Gothic allegory is ultimately about us, isn't it? It suggests that hiding from our own inner emptiness just leads to a life of static control. But what if we find the courage to actually face it? To integrate our ugliest parts, and maybe even learn to love the chaos? What happens when you finally smile at the void?